I'm Jeanie Griffin, and I grew up in Taft, Texas, which is a teeny tiny town near Corpus Christi. It's on the Gulf Coast, and at that time when I grew up, I was the youngest of 4 children. My father died when I was 15, and my mother died when I was 21. I grew up in an alcoholic home, and being an adult child of alcoholism comes with its own set of hurts and insecurities, but I also grew up, while it was an addicted home, I grew up knowing that I was loved. That was never a question, that we children were loved. My father taught me about the mystery. It's what I call the mystery, which is what I call spirit or God. And we'd sit in our backyard we had a church pew. We'd sit on the church pew and when thunderstorms would start, and here we were on this wooden church pew under a tree, and lightning and thunder starting, and he'd say, "Let's look for tornado clouds." And I would huddle next to him, scared to death, but so excited, and would look, and then thunder would happen. He'd say, "See, God's bowling," and count and this. And so I learned about the mystery of unpredictable nature. And then I was diagnosed in 2007 with breast cancer. I found a breast lump and went into my gynecologist, who then said, "This does not look good, let's go take a look at it." We did, and sure enough, then I went to a surgeon for a lumpectomy, and the tumor was growing inward. It felt like a little cherry seed to me. And it was growing inward, so it was bigger than we thought. When I was told that, yes, this was breast cancer, the doctors, I would not be here today if there wasn't this wonderfully young woman doctor who went to bat for me with my insurance company and wanted a baseline CT. On there was a spot on my spine. And so she wouldn't proceed until we did a spinal biopsy. So one more time, she had to go fight with the insurance company. And that was kind of a scary deal, lying on my stomach and having all of Cedars-Sinai come at me with this giant big needle going into my spine. So sure enough, I had breast cancer, the same breast cancer in my breast that was on my L4. When she came back in and told me that I had cancer on L4 as well, she started in on, well, now I need to change the stage of cancer and blah, blah, blah. And I held up my hand and I said, "You know, Doc, I know you've got to have a language so you can talk to your peers about it, but I don't subscribe to any of that language. So you handle the medical and I'll handle the spiritual." And she looked at me and she said, "Okay." And we never talked about it after that. So she told me that she was going to treat it aggressively, and that she was going to use tact for chemotherapy. And I had to go into a lot of prayer and meditation to even determine that I was going to do chemo. And once I made that decision, then the next decision I had to face was, how do I allow these drugs to go into my system? I took the name of each drug, and I went in prayer, and I'm a very visual person, and probably that's why visualization and guided imagery, and I pray in pictures and get messages in pictures. And so I would pray, how do I let these drugs go into my system? And I took the T, which was Taxotere. I thought, all right, how do I do this? And I got the picture of the yew tree. And I knew that Taxotere came from the yew tree, and it's a very poisonous tree. But it's also considered the tree of life in Scotland. And I thought, you know, I love nature, and it went back to, you know, sitting on the bench with my dad, and I've always loved trees. And I thought, that's how I can do it. It just was an image that came to me that said, you can let the tree spirits come into your body if you convert Taxotere into the tree spirit. So I thought, okay, check that one off. I can allow that to come in. And so every time I had chemo, when they'd start the drip, I would say, come into my body and do your best work. Tree spirits. Then the other was adriamycin. Its generic name is doxy something or other. Well, I had these 2 fabulous dachshunds previously, and they both were passed, and I was still heartsick over it. And Miss Doodles was one dachshund, and the other was Chili Dog. And dachshunds are bred to go into badger holes and ferret out badgers, and they're very aggressive little things. And my vet used to call them land sharks because he said, Rottweilers were nothing compared to these little tiny dachshunds that would just tear an arm off the vet. So I thought, that's it. And so when they started the adriamycin, my dachshunds were allowed to come into my veins and ferret out the cancer cells. So, okay, I can live with that one. Then Cytoxin, and I thought, what about Cytoxin? Well, my dad's name was Cy, and my brother's name was Cy. In both relationships, I knew I was loved, and we both knew we loved each other. But both were fraught with some difficulties. But then the image came to me, you can let those men love you and give you strength. Because if both were here in person, they would want to do that. And the Cytoxin's an interesting drug because they wouldn't put it in a drip. They had to, at least where I had it, a nurse had to administer it because it is so toxic that if you began having an adverse reaction, she could stop it faster than they could stop a drip. So that was kind of frightening, but when she came and sat in front of me and I really felt the nausea when the Cytoxin came on. When she would do that, I would just convert it and immediately go into visualization and allow my two men, they were my first loves, my dad and my older brother. And I allowed them to love me while that was going on. And for 6 sessions, that's what we did. And each time my daughter took me, and so she was with me, and I had support there. But anyway, so my daughter took me every time, and we ate junk food and read bad Hollywood magazines to see who was, doing what to whom. And that's how we kind of got through some of the actual administration of it. And then I use my visualization. For me, it's grounding. When I start the process of meditation, I'm open to whatever images come from the other side or from me listening. But when I begin, I'm the one that's doing the praying or the talking. And it grounds me, it gives me peace. I finally, through all of the adversity in my life, I finally have come to understand what is referred to as the peace that passes all understanding. It's a peace in spite of what's happening around you.